friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Victoria, and today we are going to be doing a recommendation video for one of my all-time favorite tropes, reverse harem. So I have done, I believe, 2 or 3 previous recommendation videos for this trope, but this video is going to be entirely new books to recommend, but I will link the previous videos for this trope in the description so you can go and get even more if you haven't seen those videos already or haven't read the books from those videos. So in this video I have quite a few reverse harem or poly romances to recommend. There are so many. I absolutely adore this trope. I read it all of the time. It is one of my favorites. You just get so many all other things packed into this book. Because there are multiple heroes, you get different relationships with each of those heroes, and then as the whole in the whole harem. I just think it's so fun, and it adds so much more drama, entertainment to the story, and it takes a lot more to be a successful romance to get to that HEA when you have so many extra people, and I just think it adds so much more to the story and it makes it so much more interesting to read. So I'm going to recommend some of the ones that I've been reading recently that I have really enjoyed. So the first one that I have is a fantasy one, and it is actually Bonded by Thorns by Elizabeth Helen. This is the first book in the series. The entire series is the Beasts of Briar series, but only 2 books are out, so they will end on a cliffhanger. I don't know how many books are going to be in the series, but my guess is going to be like 5 to 7. It might not be for you if you are not a fan of unfinished series, but I highly recommend it. It is so freaking good. It is about a heroine who lives in this town, and she is considered to be super weird. Her father is considered to be super weird, and she's considered to be super weird because her father has been spending all of his days talking about how his wife, the heroine's mother, was kidnapped by fairies. And so the heroine one day, her father goes missing, and she goes searching for him, and she ends up stumbling through this rose bush into this fairy realm where her father is being held captive by the fae princes that live in this big castle, and she exchanges her life for her father's and says, "Take me hostage instead and let my father go free." And then she ends up having what I'm assuming is going to be a romance with all 4 of the princes. There are 4 princes, one prince for each season, and then I believe there might be a 5th hero eventually, based on the second book in the series, but I will not spoil anything for you. But it's going to be either 4 or 5 heroes. I really loved book 1 and book 2. Book 3 comes out in December, and it's highly on my TBR. I will definitely be reading it. But I am incredibly in love with this series, highly obsessed with it. I think it's so good. This one is one where you do get MM action in it also. So it is MM, F, MM, and then possibly another M. So there are scenes with some sword crossing and some MM love, which I adore in my reverse harem romances. So highly recommend this one. It's so freaking good. If you want a fantasy, fae vibes, would definitely check it out. Next reverse harem that I have is another series, and the first book in that series is called Legacy of Shadows by Tessa Hale. The heroine in this book has an abusive relationship with her mother. Her mother is abusive, and she just wants to survive and then be able to escape when she gets old enough. But one day her childhood best friend shows up and rescues her from her mother and takes her back to his house in his town, and she ends up living with him and his friends who live in the house, and finding out that they are shifters. They're paranormal, so there's some shifter elements going on. Each guy is a different kind of paranormal creature, different kind of shifter or warlock or whatever, and she ends up finding this out. She had no idea, and she ends up also finding out that she has paranormal backgrounds, like in her family, and that they think that she is possibly going to be the anchor for their like coven, I guess, for lack of a better word. I cannot remember what it's called, but basically the guys are part of this group, and then with the guys, they need to have a anchor that helps anchor their powers, and they think it's going to be her. And there are all sorts of political things going on because there was a talk that one of the other people is going to be an anchor, or if she expresses her powers, or who her true parentage is. So it's really interesting. It's a really fun series. You get a lot of different elements with the different heroes. Each hero is very unique, which I love. I highly recommend reading Tessa Hale if you are new to reverse harems. She does a really good job of making them not too overly complicated, not too dark, just nice paranormal, easy romances that are super interesting, and I really enjoy them as I read them. This series was super fun and I would recommend it. The next series that I have is Crooked Crows by Elena Lawson. This is a darker series. This one is about a heroine who ends up going to this school where the school is basically run by these 4 guys who are, actually there's 3. I think there's 3 guys. But it's run by these 3 guys who are, they're called the Crows, and they are the 3 adopted sons of the head of this gang in the town, who's like a deadly, very powerful gang in the town, and the 3 guys who run the school are the adopted sons of the leader of the gang, and they are basically the leaders of the junior gang, of all of the kids of the gang, and they run the school, and they become invested in the heroine, and she gets pulled into the gang life. She was not super, it's not something that she wanted, but she ends up being forced. She's got no choice, and it was so addictive. I binged this series so much. I love that each of the heroes has a completely different relationship with the heroine, and there is some anger over sharing, which I think is so fun to have all the guys work out, because the guys are super possessive in this one. Each guy has a different nickname for the heroine, which I love, a very unique, different nickname for her. And I really, really enjoyed this series. It's definitely dark with the gangs and sort of a bully aspect going on, especially in the first book. But I think it's so fun, so interesting, and definitely a really, really fun series if you want a darker style one. There is no MM in this one, so it's just FMMM. So highly recommend, super fun, especially to binge. The next book that I have is actually just a single book, and that is Pucking Around by Emily Rath. This is a MMFM romance, and it is a hockey romance. The heroine gets a job as a sports medicine doctor for a hockey team in Florida, and so she moves there, and she ends up seeing this guy who she had a one-night stand with and a super instant connection with, and he is one of the players on the team, and she ends up having a relationship with him, another player on the team, and also the, what is he, equipment manager? I think he's the equipment manager for the team, and they all have a relationship. One of the players on the team and the equipment manager are also in a relationship, so that's where the MM aspect comes in, but the other player on the team is not in a relationship with the other 2. It's just, he's just with the heroine. But I adored this romance, and it is very, very long. However, you do get every single character's perspective, which I loved. This book had some of the best communication in it for a romance that I have read in a very, very long time. They all really sit down and talk to each other and discuss how they're feeling, how this is going to work, what they want out of this relationship, and I think it is so beautifully done, and in a way that is so completely believable for a romance that features 4 people. There are 4 people involved in this romance, and it is a contemporary romance. It's not a dark romance, it's not a fantasy, it's not a paranormal, it's just a normal contemporary romance, and the way that this relationship ends up is so believable for a regular person in 2023. It worked so well. And I truly, truly believed their romance and believed that they would actually last past the end of the book. I loved this, and I loved the characters. I thought they were all completely unique, fully developed, and they fit so well together. I loved it. I loved also how much the MM relationship was was fleshed out and developed. One of the characters does have a bisexual awakening in this one. The other hero always knew he was bisexual, but one of the heroes who has the romance with the other man, he didn't know he was bisexual, and so I love that sexual awakening, him realizing his feelings for his friend, and I think it was so well done. It all worked out together. One of my top reads of 2023 for sure. I adored this book. The next one that I have is actually another series, and it is another dark series, and that is The Sainthood by Siobhan Davis. This is another series that deals with gangs and like mafias. The heroine in this one, her father was slightly involved in gang life. She actually was kidnapped as a child because of his involvement in the gang, because of other involvements in the gang. The heroine was kidnapped by a head of a gang when she was a child, and that has sent her on a different path. She has been trained in self-defense, in understanding the gang politics and everything, so that she can survive in the world right now. The heroine ends up having a one-night stand on a day when she really is feeling overwhelmed. She ends up having a one-night stand with the 4 members of the Sainthood. They are 4 members of the gang, and they are very high up in the gang, and she has a one-night stand with them, and it ends up getting recorded and distributed, and so everyone knows. And then on top of that, one of the guys, his father, who is the head of the gang, ends up getting engaged to the heroine's mother, and so they all move into her house. She does not trust the guy who is engaged to her mom at all. It ends up being a bully romance. It ends up being incredibly dark, very politically involved. Like, the heroine is trying to figure out who to trust, who she believes. She's trying to basically take down the head of the gang who she hates, and she is trying to avenge her father's death, who she thinks has been murdered. And it is so interesting. Like I said, it is dark, it's bully. The heroes are definitely morally gray, definitely anti-heroes, but the heroine's pretty badass, and I really liked the way the relationships developed between them. I thought it was really, really cool, and I did really like the gang aspect of it and trying to figure out, like, who do I trust? Who has the information? What are we looking for? And every time I thought that you could trust somebody, they would turn around and be bad, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was so fun. I read these back to back to back, so fully binged the series. They each end on cliffhangers, but it's so good. Would highly recommend. The next one that I have is another series, and that is the WITX series by Ashley N. Rostek. This one was actually recommended to me in a comment by one of my subscribers, so thank you, because I did read it and absolutely love it. This is a 4-book series, I believe, featuring a heroine who is in witness protection. Her family was murdered by this stalker serial killer, and she survived, but he is still after her, and so she goes into witness protection, and she's over 18, so she actually ends up living alone, even though she has another year of high school. Her uncle, who is technically her guardian or in charge of her, he's a marshal, so he has to go work and try and find the guy who's stalking her, who killed her family. And so she lives alone, and she ends up having a romance with the 4, I believe, brothers who live next door to her. And they're all related, they're all brothers, so there is no sword crossing involved here, but all of them have a romance with her. I really, really loved this. It was so addictive. It was so suspenseful because the heroine is in so much danger. There is the guy who's still after her. You don't know when he's gonna pop up. She has nightmares. She has a lot of paranoia because this man had been following her, because he killed her family and she witnessed it. But it was so interesting. I loved the way her relationship developed with each of the heroes. It was very different with each of the heroes. They were all very different, but 2 of them are twins, which I loved. So you did get that involvement in there, but it was so good. so bingeable. I could not put these down. So thank you so much to the person who recommended these to me, because I absolutely loved them, and I'm now going to fully recommend them to the rest of you because they're really, really good. The next one that I have is Riches to Riches by Ames Mills, I think is what her name is. And this is just part 1 because I've only read part 1, but this is a duet, so there is a part 2. I just haven't read it yet, but I really enjoyed this. This is another one that is mafia or gangs. I think it's more mafia. The heroine is the head of the, I believe, Italian mafia. Her father died, and when her father died, he passed the mafia on to her. He named her his successor, which was so out of the blue. Like, nobody thought that he would pass it on to her because she is a woman, and they thought he would pass it on to his half brother because he's a man, and there's never been a female head of the mafia. But she is absolutely badass. She's so cool. I loved her. And this one is really interesting because the heroine ends up dating this guy named Leo, and he doesn't know she's mafia, or she doesn't think he knows she's mafia, and he is just some regular guy, and she's falling in love with him until she finds out that he is related to a rival mafia. And then she ends up being still in love with him, but the men in her inner circle, like her second in command, her bodyguard, those kind of people who live with her in her house, they've all had crushes on her for a long time. They've just never thought that it would work out. But she ends up falling in love with this other guy, and they're all like, she's ready to be in a relationship. And so one of the heroes puts it into her head that she shouldn't have to choose, she should get whatever she wants, and that he's fine with sharing. And so she ends up having romance with all of them. I really, really loved this. There is sword crossing in this one. Multiple of the heroes are together, and I loved that. There are, I believe, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 heroes. So it's MMF, MMM, I think. But there could be another hero being added in part 2, because I'm slightly thinking that that's the way it's going to go, because we did get his perspective, and I feel like if you get his perspective, he's going to be in the harem, but we're not sure yet. Book 1 did end on a cliffhanger, so I'm definitely going to be reading part 2. I had such a fun time with this book. It was so addictive. It had some of the best spice that I have read in a long time. The spice in this was so hot. Oh my god, I was dying during some of the scenes. I was like, holy crap, get me some water, because they were so spicy. So if you want something super spicy, mafia, badass heroine, would highly recommend this book. It's so fun. Then last one that I have for this video is Psycho Shifters by Jasmine Mass. This is another paranormal style reverse harem series. In this world, there are alphas and betas and omegas, kind of like levels of hierarchy in the structure of how powerful you're going to be. And the heroine ends up presenting as an alpha. She ends up presenting as somebody who's going to be super, super powerful. And she shows up at, basically it's kind of like a school where they're training to be part of the war that's going on. And she shows up, they're like, what are you? And she's like, I'm an alpha. And they are like, there's no way. She looks really small and petite and weak, and they're like, there's no way that you're gonna be that powerful. But she ends up showing them that she is that powerful, and she ends up having a relationship with, I think there's 3 other alphas that are living at this school. And it is a very interesting story. The first book is definitely a little bullying at first, but there is a full political aspects of what's going on in the war, who's actually fighting, what do we believe, and it was really interesting. It was a fun paranormal series. I did fully binge this series as well, but it was super fun. I gave all of the books in this series 4 stars, I believe, and it was just really fun. And if you want something fun, paranormal, reverse harem with some spice, would recommend this book. That's the last one that I have for this video, though I have multiple more that I have, so I could do a part either 4 or 5 of this video. So let me know if you want even more reverse harem recommendation videos. But that's gonna be it for this one. So like this video if you liked it, subscribe, stick around, see more content from me, and leave me a comment down below if there's more reverse harems that you love that you think I should read, because I would love for some more recommendations for me. But that's it, so I hope that you have the absolute best day. Bye.